Maraming salamat, Voltaire. Magandang gabi po. Bros, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, bro, we can.
Okay. Just in case mag-lag ako, you feel free to interrupt me. So I don't want to keep speaking tapos hindi nyo na pala ako naririnig. So magandang gabi po muli sa inyong lahat, BCBP Marikina chapter. I'm very blessed and very thankful for this wonderful opportunity to speak to you during this Lenten season. Magandang gabi po, Brother Oka, to the chapter head. Magandang gabi po sa lahat ng leaders and members and guests of BCBP Marikina. Once again, it's my joy to join you tonight. For starters po, I'd like to ask for audience participation. Okay, I'm sure by this time, kabisado nyo na po yung chat box, di po ba? Okay, can I ask you to write on the chat box in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, how excited are you for the season of Lent? 1 being the lowest, not very excited, 5, very, very excited about Lent. Okay, 5. Okay, good. Thank you, brothers and sisters. You see, for the ordinary Catholic, Lent may not be the most exciting season for them. They're excited sometimes with Christmas and Advent, Pentecost, or Easter, or even Christ the King. Pero pag Lent, for the ordinary Catholic, not for the Catholic charismatics like us, for the ordinary Catholic, Lent is not such a good season. Bakit? Anong naiisip mo? Giving up things, right? Sacrifice, fasting, abstinence, all these things. But I realize the reason why many people don't like Lent, it's because they don't understand fully the power of the Lenten season, the power of the tools that the Lenten season gives us. Ano po ba itong mga tools na to? Tools like prayer, fasting, and alms giving. These are powerful tools to help us overcome. What do I mean by this? Madalas po ako nagbabiyahe out of the country. At nagpapack po ng gamit ko, nag-i-impake para sa akin yung misis ko. And one time po, I went to Kuwait for a 1-week retreat. I gave a 1-week retreat in Kuwait for the Filipino community there. And I remember, pagdating ko po ng Kuwait, binuksan ko po yung bag ko, magtututbrush ako. Nakita ko po ito. Nakita mo ba kayo ng ganitong toothbrush? Sabi ko, pagtanggal ko din yan, sabi ko, ano ba yung toothbrush na binigay ng misis ko? Napakaliit. So nagtututbrush po ako. Maniwala kayo sa hindi, isang linggo po, nagtututbrush ako ng ganito kaliit na toothbrush. Tapos loob ko, sabi, ano ba naman itong misis ko? Ang liit-liit ng toothbrush na binigay sa akin. The moment I arrived in the Philippines, tinanong ko kaagad siya, sabi ko, bakit naman, sweetheart, napakaliit naman ang toothbrush na itong binigay mo sa akin? Sabi ng misis ko, tawa siya ng tawa, and probably you know why she was laughing. Because we all know that to be able to use this, kailangan kinakabit mo siya, right? Para makapag-toothbrush ka. But for 1 week, I thought I did not have what I need. Only to find out that actually I had what I need, I just didn't know how to use it. My dear brothers and sisters, do you have problems and challenges in life today? And do you know that you have what it takes to overcome these challenges? Because the church has given us all the tools that we need. The problem sometimes is we do not know how to use them so that we can overcome the challenges that we face in life. Ano po ba yung mga challenges na nakikita natin sa paligid natin today? The title of my presentation is on your screen, Overcome. Kita niyo po ba, boss? Kita niyo? Okay. May papakita po ako sa screen ninyo ngayon. Ang ipapakita ko po sa screen ninyo would be movies. Old movies. Now, depende po sa edad ninyo kung alam niyo yung title ng pelikula, pakisulat na lang po sa chat box. Sa tingin po ninyo, anong movie ito? Ano pong movie yan? Any idea? Wala pong nagsusulat. Starring Pierce Brosnan. The title of the movie is Dante's Peak. Correct. Si Denise got it right. Dante's Peak. Meron pong volcano na nag-explode. Okay? Yan po yung nangyari dyan. Second, anong movie ito? The younger ones would know, starring The Rock. Anong movie ito? The title of the movie is San Andreas actually. And this talks about this huge earthquake that happened in California. The fourth movie, medyo luma din. Anong movie ito? There's something to do with Ebola. The title of the movie starring Dustin Hoffman is, meron ba? Meron bang gusto mag-venture ng guest? Outbreak. Si Voltaire, nakuha niya. Okay. The next movie, starring Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow. The title of the movie, merong isang malaking pandemic na nangyari sa buong mundo. The title of the movie is Contagion. Nakuha nila. Si Brother Oka, nakuha nila. And the last movie, I'm sure alam niyo na, may title na po dyan sa screen. Red Dawn. This talks about Russia invading a country, America. What's my point? Sa tingin po ninyo, what's my point for me showing all these things? Many of the things that happen in the movies are happening in the world today as I speak. A year ago, Taal was about to explode, was actually exploded, right? Also last year, ano nangyari? There was an earthquake in Davao and in Cotabato. Actually, a few days ago yata, may earthquake din dito sa Manila, no? And then, of course, we are familiar with outbreak and contagion. There's a pandemic happening in the world today. And then, of course, we all know there's a war in Ukraine because Russia invaded Ukraine. My dear friends, we live in a time of great danger, in a time of great challenge. Not to mention your personal challenges in life. Atin-atin lang po, wag na po kayo magtaas ng kamay. But how many of you here are going through financial troubles? How many of you here are going through family relationship problems? How many of you here are going through some challenges because of these elections? Nag-aaway-away kayo ng mga kaibigan nyo. How many of you here are going through some anxieties and worries because of your health? There are so many challenges in the world today, and that's why I'd like to say, in a way, we are in the desert. We are in a wilderness. Nasa disyerto po tayo. Bakit? What is a wilderness? A wilderness is a place of depletion and danger. Ang wilderness po, or ang disyerto, by the way, magkaiba po yung disyerto at wilderness, but they are used interchangeably. It's a place of depletion. Walang tubig, walang pagkain, nagugutom ka. It's also a place of danger. May scorpions, may ahas, may mga, all these other animals that would endanger your life. In other words, a desert is a place of depletion and danger. Nandiyan din po tayo ngayon. 2 years into the pandemic, plus the war, plus all our challenges in life, we are in a place of depletion and great danger. And that's why in today's talk, I want to use the gospel story about Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. Jesus being tempted in the desert. Alam niyo po, it's ironic, but it's actually coincidental. But actually, it's not a coincidence, but it's really, I think, purposive. And the gospel writers will tell you this. Now, 40 days in the desert. And Lent is also 40 days. Kaya nga po, Quaresma, Quadragesima, 40. And so what am I saying here? This experience of Jesus in the desert is also a good Lenten experience for us to be able to appreciate our own deserts in life, our own wilderness in life. And let me begin with the first verse. Nakalagay po dito, Matthew 4 verse 1. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. Question, who led Jesus into the desert? Sino nagdala kay Jesus sa disyerto? It's in the passage. It's the Holy Spirit. It's God Himself who brought Him to the desert. Anong ibig sabihin nito sa atin? Ibig sabihin, sometimes it's the Lord who allows us to go through our own deserts. I believe, brothers and sisters, God is not the source of our sufferings, but God allows it. God allowed this pandemic. God allowed the war that's happening right now. God allowed the challenges that we face right now in our lives. He's not the source of it, but He allows it. Why? Why? That's the question. Bakit? Bakit pinahihintulutan ng Diyos na dumaan tayo sa ating mga disyerto? In the case of Jesus, why did the Holy Spirit lead Him to the wilderness? And the answer is, to be tempted by the devil? No. That's the means towards an end. What's the end? So that Jesus will be prepared for His ministry. Because alam po natin, after 40 days in the desert, He began preaching. In other words, the 40 days was a time of preparation. The 40 days was a time to bring out the best in Him. So that when He goes out and preach and do His mission, He will be the best version of Himself. I believe the Lord allows us to go through our wilderness, through our deserts in life, because the Lord wants to bring out the best in us, so that after our wilderness, the Lord can send us out for greater mission. BCBP Marikina, I don't know what's your experience during this pandemic. Maybe your mission slowed down a bit, perhaps. But I have good news for you. After the wilderness comes greater mission. And the Lord will make you more fruitful, because the 40 days or the desert that you've been through was a time to bring out the best in you. The wilderness is also a place of strengthening and purification. That's what the Lord did to Jesus. That's what God did to Jesus. Jesus was tempted in the desert in order to be strengthened and in order to be purified. Sino po sa inyo ang naka-experience na because of this pandemic, mas lalo po kayong naging madasalin? Mas naging madasalin po ba kayo? Dahil dito sa economic crisis and political crisis that we're going through, have you been more prayerful? Weren't you more purified? Weren't you more strengthened to fight? That's what I want to talk to you about today. In the desert, we can be purified. And in the next 40 days, I hope you will use this time during this Lenten season to bring out the best in you, to become the best version of yourself as a father, as a mother, as a husband, as a wife, as a community leader, as a ministry head, as an action group leader. Bring out the best in you so that after the pandemic, so that after the war, so that after the wilderness, you are ready, more ready than ever before to do mission for God. And you know what I noticed? The three temptations in the desert of Jesus corresponds to the three weapons of the Christian life. What are the three weapons? Prayer, fasting, and alms giving. Yung tatlong tentasyon sa desierto po, ang katumbas nun, meron siyang correlation sa tatlong weapons that we can use during this Lenten season to bring out the best in us. What are these three temptations in the desert? The first one, the temptation of self-satisfaction. The temptation of self-satisfaction, and there's a word for it, pleasure. Nakalagay po sa Matthew 4:2-4. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Jesus was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." What is the temptation here? Ano po yung temptation dito? The temptation to satisfy your bodily needs, to satisfy your senses. The temptation for pleasure. Now, is pleasure bad? Pleasure like eating or sleeping or even sex, is it bad? No. God-given yan. And we're saying here, we're not saying here that dapat we shouldn't indulge our pleasure. No, we should. In the proper context, we should. The sex should be enjoyed in marriage. Eating has to be enjoyed, especially kapag you are, you're trying to eat well, sleeping, you need a lot of sleep. These are not bad things. But when do they become bad? Kailan po naging masama itong mga pleasurable things that we want to experience in life? When they become the most important thing in our life. They become bad when they become the primary good of our lives. We know that it isn't bad. But if pag siya po yung naging sentro ng buhay natin, then there's a problem. Why? They become an attachment. People, you want to always be, to experience pleasure. And that's why it's important for us to understand why is it wrong to be attached to these things. Bakit po masama maging attached to these earthly pleasures? Well, because we all know that they don't last. Sino po sa inyo dito pag gutom, kumakain? I think tayo pong lahat, ano? Pero yung iba po, gutom na gutom. Pagkain na busog, after a few hours, gutom na uli. Di po ba? Yung iba nga ilang minuto pa lang, gutom na kaagad. Di ba? What's my point? They don't last. How many year goes on vacation? Long weekend, nagbakasyon ka. After 3 days, pabalik ka na ng Manila, anong nasa isip mo? Ganun kaya yung next na long weekend? You're never satisfied. You're never satisfied by the things in life. You buy a new house, after a few years, it's already old. Di po ba? You're tired now, you sleep. After a few hours, you wake up, okay ka na uli. After a few hours, inaantok ka na naman. Nothing lasts in this life. And if we are so attached to these things, we will never be satisfied. Yan po ang source ng discontent. Kaya po marami ang discontented sa buhay because they try to place their satisfaction on these things that are not meant to satisfy us. And so what's the weapon? What's the weapon against the temptation of self-satisfaction? Ito po yung fasting and abstinence. Fasting and abstinence. Yan po ang solusyon. Bakit? What are we saying when we fast from our favorite food? What are we saying? What we're saying is this, Lord, I really love crispy pata. Pero for Lent, Lord, hindi ako kakain ng cholesterol. Why? Because you are more important to me. I can live without crispy pata, but I cannot live without you, Lord. What am I saying? What are we saying? Lord, I am not attached to crispy pata because I'm more attached to you. It's a discipline that allows us to be more attached to God than to earthly things, than to pleasurable things in this world. Now, Bob, wala naman akong problem with crispy pata eh. Eh, okay lang, then wag yan ang i-give up mo. Anong pwedeng i-give up? Perhaps you can give up the things that you're attached to. For instance, in my case, I love 1 bottle of beer at the end of every week. But for the 40 days, no alcohol. Naalala ko tuloy yung bunso ko. Sabi ng bunso ko, Papa, I'm so attached to my studies. Yan na, alam mo na po yung kasunod. Ano? Alam mo na yung kasunod. Diba? If you're attached to something, then choose to give it up. Why? What are you saying to the Lord? Lord, I love this thing so much, but I'm not going to do it this next 40 days because I want to train my heart to want nothing else but you alone. I could live without them, but I could never live without you. And because you are now contented with God, you are now contented for life. Why? Because only God can satisfy. None of these things will satisfy, only God can satisfy. At ang maganda po nito, kadalasan, when you give up something during Lent, for instance, may kakilala po ako, he gave up gossiping. Kasalanan po yan, ano? He gave up gossiping, yung pagchichismis. After Lent, tinuloy na niya. Eh, what happened? He's holier now. Kasi masimulan niya ng Lent, tinuloy niya buong buhay niya. Many of the things that we cannot give up in ordinary times, we are able to give up during Lent because there is extra grace during Lent. So kung meron po kayong gustong i-give up for the longest time, for instance, you're attached. For instance, you're attached to smoking. Okay? Hindi naman po kasalanan ng smoking, but if you're attached to it and you say, ayoko na sana, ang tagal ko na gusto give up pero hindi ko nag-give up, why don't you try it during this Lent? Why? Because during this Lent, there's extra grace to give up these things. At malay nyo, pag nag-give up nyo ng 40 days, pwede nyo nang ituloy-tuloy. Many of the things that we give up during Lent, especially the sinful ones, we can continue giving them up for the rest of our life. It's a time of freedom. We can be freed from these things. Kwento lang po ako. There was a time that I was a member of the Servants of the Word. It's like a seminary, but hindi po kami magiging pare. We were supposed to become lay brothers or single for the Lord brothers. During Lent, my leader, yung formator ko sa seminaryo, sabi sa akin, Bob, for the next 40 days, why don't you give up cracking jokes? Now, Voltaire would know this. I love cracking jokes. When I gave talks before, when I was younger, halos every sentence may joke. In fact, there was one time na joke po ako sa talk ko. Nilapitan po ako ng tao. Sabi, Brother Bobby, ang saya-saya naman ng talk mo. Sabi ko talaga, anong natutunan mo? Wala, masaya lang yung talk mo. Wala pa siya natutunan. So I love cracking jokes. So for the next 40 days, sabi sa akin ng formator, why don't you give up cracking jokes? So for 40 days po, hindi po ako nagjo-joke. Bakit kaya pinag-give up sa akin? Hirap na hirap po ako. At the end of 40 days, you know what I realized? I realized that my cracking jokes was really an act of insecurity. Because when people laugh, it affirms me. And that's why I keep joking so that when people laugh, it affirms me. Nagiging confident ako sa sarili ko. I realized I was attached to cracking jokes because the real problem was my insecurity. And so for 40 days na hindi ako nagjo-joke, nag-struggle po ako. But after 40 days, I realized God has given me the grace. Hindi na ako magjo-joke. I still crack jokes. But I'm no longer attached to it. Meaning to say, whether I crack jokes or not, whether people laugh, whether people don't, it doesn't matter anymore. Because for me, what's most important is God. What am I saying? Lent is a good time to give up certain things that compete with God in your life. Give up certain things that compete with God in your life. Before I proceed to the second one, can I give you 30 seconds? Iinom lang po ako ng tubig. Can you just think very quickly? What things in your life which you think God would want you to give up permanently this Lenten season? In the next 30 seconds, ask yourself, what things in your life today do you think God would want you to give up permanently this Lenten season? It could be a bad habit. It could be a sinful habit. It could be not sinful, but it could be something that competes with God in your life. Second, the temptation of self-entitlement. And what is the word that captures self-entitlement? Pride. Oops. Okay, pride. Pride. Now somebody once told me, sabi niya sa akin, Bob, you know, God is really blessing you. Sabi ko, bakit? Kasi you're doing so much for God. That's why God is blessing you. I immediately corrected her. I said to her, no, I don't think so. I think God is blessing me, not because I'm doing a lot for Him. God is blessing me because that is the nature of God, to bless. Anong nangyari doon? Ano sinasabi ko doon, mga kapatid? Sometimes, we have this notion that God's supposed to bless me because I'm serving Him in BCBP Marikina. God is supposed to bless me because I'm trying to live a good life. God is supposed to bless me because I am faithful to my wife and I take care of my children. God is supposed to bless me because I'm an action group leader. I'm in the music ministry. God is supposed to bless me, and therefore when God doesn't bless me, nagtatampo tayo. Lord, Nagsaserve naman ako bakit hindi mo binigay yung promotion sa akin? Di po ba? Sometimes we think that way. It's as if we are entitled to God's blessings. It's as if God owes us to bless us because we're doing good. Don't you think that's pride? Parang ito pong nangyari kay Jesus. Hindi po ba? In Matthew 4, 5-7, then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up with their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answered him, it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Anong sabi ng demonyo sa kanya? Abay, tumalon ka dyan sa templo. Son of God ka naman eh. Dapat save ka ng mga anghel. Kasi you're the Son of God. What's that? Self-entitlement. Ang bait-bait mo eh. You're the Son of God. You're the Messiah. Surely they will save you. Self-entitlement. Nagsuserve ka sa music ministry. Surely God will bless you with financial reward. Uy, action group leader ka pala. Sigurado ako eh. Bibigay sa iyo yung promotion na kinihingi mo. Sometimes we think that way. Sometimes we think that because we're doing good, God is supposed to bless us. My dear brothers and sisters, let me tell you this. God blesses us not because we're good, but because God is good. Ulitin ko yun, ha? God blesses us not because we're good, but because God is good. Ano pong pinagkaiba ng sweldo at regalo? Sige nga po. Sa tingin po natin, anong pinagkaiba ng sweldo at regalo? Ang sweldo, pinaghirapan mo. Di po ba? Kaya tinatanggap mo siya. Pag hindi ka sinweldohan, as a lawyer, I would say, you have the right to demand. Sweldo yan eh. But how about a gift? Do you have the right to demand for a person to give you something? No. A gift is not something you work for. Binibigay sa iyo yan, hindi dahil you deserve it, but because the other person is simply generous to you. My dear brothers and sisters, everything that we receive from God is a gift. Yung bahay mo, yung trabaho mo, yung asawa mo, yung pamilya mo, yung mga anak mo, yung mga apo mo, all of the things that you have, you receive as gift. And therefore, ano ang kalaban ng self-entitlement? What weapon? Alms giving. Alms giving ang weapon against self-entitlement. Bakit? I don't know, BCBP Marikina, meron po ba kayong this Lent, meron po ba kayong ministry work to the poor? I'm not sure, no? I hope you do. Alms giving to the less fortunate. That's one of the powerful tools of Lent. Why? Because when we give to somebody, what are we saying? Lord, lahat ng meron ako, hindi akin. Lahat ito regalo mula sa iyo, and therefore I'm willing to give them away for your sake. The Lord said, if you do it to the least of my brethren, you do it to me. And therefore, lahat ng meron ka, pinapadaan niya lang sa kamay mo, pero iba ang dapat tumanggap nun. Whatever blessing you have, God gives to you to let it pass through your hands so that others may benefit from it. Kapag nagbigay po kayo sa mahirap at yung mahirap na yon hindi ka kayang bayaran, anong tawag doon? Regalo, di po ba? Every time we give something to the poor and he could not pay you back, it will remind you of your relationship with God, that everything you have is a gift and that you do not deserve anything from the Lord. The enemy of gratitude is not ingratitude, but self-entitlement. Kapag feeling natin we deserve everything we have, pinaghirapan ko to eh. Itong kotse na meron ako, pinaghirapan ko to eh. Itong pera meron ako, pinaghirapan ko to. We will not be so willing to give it away. But if we receive something and we say, itong bonus na natanggap ko, bigay naman to ng Panginoon sa akin eh. Regalo ito. So it's easier for you to give it away. The result of gratitude is generosity. And grateful people are better servants of the Lord. Ganun po yung misis ko. My wife is more generous than me. Sobra po yung misis ko. Napaka-generous niyan. Isang beses po, naalala ko, birthday po ng anak ko, yung aking second daughter at that time, first year. No? 1 year old yung daughter ko noon. Ang birthday po niya, Christmas Day, December 25. So, nag-party po kami sa Jollibee ng December 25. Sa tingin niyo po ba may dumating na guest? Paskong Pasko, may darating na guest. Walang dumating na guest. Konting-konti. Pero ang dami po naming pagkain, mga packed food. So, sama-sama ng loob ko sa gumastos ako, konti lang yung guest na dumating. Anong sabi ng misis ko? Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord ka dyan. Di ikaw yung gastos, akong gumastos. Sabi niya, praise the Lord. Ibig sabihin, walang street children na magugutom ngayong Pasko. Huh? So, ang ginawa ng misis ko, pinalagay yung mga styrofoam na mga packed food sa aming sasakyan. Tapos dahil Christmas Day po, wala masyadong sasakyan, umikot po kami sa buong Maynila, sa Quezon City lang. Tumitigil kami sa gitna ng daan, nagtatakbuhan ng mga street children at nagbibigay po kami ng mga food sa kanila during Christmas Day. Yung eldest ko pa nga po, nagbibigay lang food, sumisingil pa. Sabi ko ka lang sumingil, ano? Ganyan, bigay niya, libre na yan. But you know, when we got home, guess who were the happiest people in the world that day? Probably not the street children, but us. Why? Because when you give something away, it reminds you of God's goodness in your life. It reminds you that everything you have is a gift from a loving God to you. And so I encourage you, my dear brothers and sisters in BCBP Marikina, give. Magbigay. Give as much as you can. Because every time you give away, you receive more of God's mercy and God's love and God's fulfillment and God's joy in your life. Saint Teresa of Lisieux said this, everything is grace because everything is God's gift. 30 seconds na po, discussion starters. For your mind lang, reflection pala. Recount your blessings, count your blessings, and why are you thankful for these blessings? Try to think, if you have a paper and a pen, list down all the blessings that you have in your life right now. Your wife, your children, your grandchildren, your job, your pension, your car, your house, whatever. List them down. And start thanking God one by one, because in thanking God, you remind yourself, regalo ito, hindi sweldo. Binigay hindi dahil karapat-dapat. Binigay kundi dahil may nagmamahal sa akin na Diyos. And lastly, the temptation of self-sufficiency. The word for that is power. The word for that is power. Tingnan po natin ito. Matthew 4, 8 to 10. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him alone. Ano sinasabi ni Satanas? What was Satan telling him? Do you want to be powerful? Do you want to be in control? Do you want to be in charge? Then worship me. Atin lang po, how many of you here would want to be in control of many things in your life? You want to be in control of many things in your life. Your business, your household schedule, your health. But one thing you realize, my dear friends, especially during this pandemic, is that no matter how powerful, how healthy, how disciplined, how good you are, there are still many things that are beyond your control. Marami pa rin bagay sa buhay natin ang beyond our control. For instance, this pandemic, siguro nag-ipon kayo. Pero nung bigla na lang dumating tong pandemic unexpectedly, how many of us lost our jobs? How many of us had our finances depleted? How many of us who we thought we were healthy, suddenly we got COVID? Sino po sa inyo ang nawalan ng mahal sa buhay? At madalas sabihin natin, bakit kaya nawalan kami ba't kaya siya namatay? Eh, ang healthy nun. Alam niyo ba si patient number 4? Okay, I won't mention the name. Patient number 4 of COVID was a health buff. Ang nagkwento nito yung doktor. Patient number 4, so patient number 1, dito sa Metro Manila, patient number 4 was a health buff and he died. In a snap of a finger, he left behind a young wife and young children. What's my point? We realize that we can never be in control. We cannot have enough power to control the many things in our life. And because of that, na-realize po natin, dahil sa pandemyang ito, that we are not in control, and because of this, we are often worried. Sino po dito ang madalas nagwo-worry? Naku, baka bukas, tumaas na naman ang presyo ng gasolina, ng crudo, dahil sa Ukraine war. Naku, baka bigla na lang may bagong variant na naman na lumabas. Naku, ano kayang mangyayari sa mga anak namin? Ang tagal-tagal na ng online class. Naku, ano kayang mangyayari sa mga apo ko? Ano kayang mangyayari sa family namin? Naku, kawawa naman yung aking worries. When we realize that we are not in control, that's the source of worry. Pag alam natin may mga bagay na beyond our control, we worry. What's the solution? What's the weapon? Prayer. The way to combat the desire for power and control is prayer. Why? Because when you pray, what happens? You remind yourself that you are not in control, but He is. Tuwing nagdadasal po tayo araw-araw, ang sinasabi natin, Panginoon, hindi ako Diyos. Ikaw ang Diyos. Ikaw ang nakaupo sa trono. Ikaw ang may likha ng lahat. Ikaw ang pinakamagaling. And when we pray, we magnify God and we atomize our problems. I'll say it again. We magnify God and we atomize our problems. Lumalaki ang Diyos sa buhay natin, lumiliit ang mga problema natin. Because when we pray, we remind ourselves that no matter how big our problems are, God will always be bigger than them. That's what prayer does. Ako po, every morning I pray. I go up to my office here in the house kasi I have 3 floors po yung bahay namin. I go up to the 3rd floor. I lock my office room. I sit on my chair and I talk to God. And every time I do that, my problems shrink. Every time I talk to God, my challenges, my worries, my anxieties, my concerns, they shrink. Because God becomes bigger in my life. My dear brothers and sisters, how many of you here are still praying every day? Hindi ko sinasabing bless us, O Lord lang po, ano? Hindi po yan counted. Hindi po yan yung tipong papatulog ka na Lord, please bless me tonight. No, I'm talking here of a time with God na talagang uupo kayo at kakausapin niyo yung Diyos. Can I encourage you? If you have been praying for 30 minutes a day, why don't you pray for an hour? Especially those who are retired. Those who are working, why don't you use your time to commute or your time in the middle of the traffic to pray more this Lent? Because remember, my dear brothers and sisters, the more you pray, the smaller your problems become and the bigger God becomes in your life. Meron po akong papakita sa inyo sa screen. This is a picture of John F. Kennedy with his son. And this picture became a classic in Time magazine. Why? Because this happened during the missile crisis of Cuba, where the missiles of Cuba were positioned facing the United States. Bakit po ito naging classic? Because paano ka nakakalaro? How can you play in the middle of a war? Talking about the son of JFK. How can he play in the middle of a war? Parang wala siyang problema. Naglalaro pa siya sa ilalim ng table ng kanyang ama. Why? Because he knows that the one in charge is his father. He knows that the one in charge is his father. That's why he's not worried. He's not concerned. Do you want to be not worried? Gusto niyo po bang mawala ng worry? Then resign as the general manager of the universe. Ulitin ko po ano? Resign as the general manager because you are not in control. Remind yourself when you pray, my Father in heaven is in charge. He is in control of my mortgage. He is in control of the cancer cells in my body. He is in control of my relationship with my spouse. He is in control of our business. He is in control of the future of my children and my grandchildren. He is the one in charge. He is God, not me. That's what prayer does to us. I remember this story years ago. There was this black plague, this pandemic, epidemic that happened in Europe many centuries ago. People were dying everywhere. But there was this one scientist by the name of Felix Ruh who wanted to experiment on coming up with a cure for the black diphtheria. Anong ginawa ni Felix Ruh? He went to the forest, got 10 horses, and started swabbing the 10 horses with black diphtheria virus on their mouths. 9 of the 10 horses died. But the 10th horse, yung pang-10 kabayo, nang hina. But overnight, nag-survive. You know what Felix Ruh did? He killed the horse. He got the blood of the horse, went to the nearest hospital where children were dying, and started inoculating the children there with the blood of the horse, and one by one the children survived. Why? Because he used the blood of the overcomer. The horse was the one who overcome the disease, and through the blood of the horse, it became now the medicine so that people can overcome the virus. My dear friends, who is the greatest overcomer? Jesus. And the good news is this: the blood of the overcomer runs through your veins. Why? Because we are Christians. We are Catholics. And by the baptism that we receive, the blood of the overcomer is running through our veins. And because of this, my friend, you have the capacity to overcome whatever challenge that you face in your life today. Kahit anuman pong pagsubok ang haharapin nyo, kakayanin nyo. Bakit? Sapagkat ang dugo ni Kristo ay nananalantay sa inyong mga ugat. You have what it takes to overcome. In ending, let me share with you some practical tips for Lent. Tatlong C po ito. First tip, choose to put God above all. May lumapit po sa akin, sabi niya, Brother Bobby, number 1 priority ko sa buhay ang Diyos. Sabi ko sa kanya, mali. Mali yan. Dapat hindi number 1 priority si Lord. Ha? Bakit? God should be above all your priorities. God is so great, so marvelous, so amazing to be ranked among your priorities. He should not even be ranked among them. He should be above them all. Ano ibig sabihin nun? God should be in all your priorities. God should be in your marriage. God should be in your work. God should be in your business. God should be in your politics. God should be in your economics. God should be in all aspects of your life. He should be above all your priorities. Pwede po ba akong mag-request? I don't know if I can see you. But if I can see you, can you raise your right hand like this? Pwede po bang taas nyo yung kamay nyo? Can you raise your right hand? Imagine this is your life. These are all the different areas of your life. Your health, your work, your service, your relationships, your business. What holds it together? It's the palm. Yung palad. Di po ba? Sabi nila, God should be the palm. He should be the one that holds all the different aspects of your life together. In Colossians it says, He holds all things together. He holds all things together. In Him, all things hold together. That's in the letter to the Colossians. Ibig sabihin yung Panginoon should be the one holding all the areas of your life together. Pag nawala po yung Panginoon, nawala yung palad ninyo, anong mangyayari sa mga daliri ninyo? Mahuhulog po yan. Kadiri po, ano? Pero mahuhulog po yan. Ganun din po ang buhay natin. Pag nawala ang Panginoon sa sentro ng buhay natin, our life will collapse. And that's why, strive to put God above all, the center of your life. Because He holds all things together. Pandemic or no pandemic, gera or no gera, cancer or no cancer, financial difficulty or no financial difficulty, for as long as God is in the center, He is above all things, He is above all, your life will hold together. Number 2, count your blessings to be a blessing. Count your blessings to be a blessing. Sabi nila, when you realize how blessed you are, you cannot help but be a blessing to others. Can I make a suggestion this Lent? Start your day by counting your blessings. Meron po akong listahan yan every day of all my blessings. And I realize, when I start counting my blessings, I become more generous. And na-realize ko, grabe pala no. Pag nilista ko po lahat ng problema ko at nilista ko lahat ng blessings ko, outnumbered po ang problema. And that's why I always say, Lord, since you bless me with so much, I have no reason not to bless others. Years ago, I went to Oman. I gave a retreat there for all the Catholics in the 3 different parishes there. And I remember the Filipino priest who hosted me. At the end of the trip, sabi niya sa akin, Brother Bobby, shopping tayo. Sabi ko, wala po akong pera, Father. Sabi niya, akong bahala. Shopping tayo. Gastos ko. Ano bang gusto ng misis mo? Ako, sa loob-loob ko na. Ang binili sa akin ng misis ko, laptop. Eko, Father, laptop yung gusto na. Laptop, bili tayong laptop. Ang mahal po, Dell pa yung brand. Grabe naman si Father. Yung mga anak mo, anong gusto? Father, Barbie doll. Barbie doll, bili tayong Barbie doll. Ang mahal po pala ng Barbie doll sa Middle East. So sabi ko, Father, ang gastos na nito. Ikaw, anong gusto mo? Anong gusto mo? Father, kailangan ko ng bagong sapatos. Bili tayo sapatos. Bumili kami sapatos. At the end of the day, sabi ko, Father, grabe, ang dami yung binili para sa akin. Hindi na nga ako magkasya sa maleta ko eh. Sabi niya, maleta. Gusto mo, bili tayo maleta. Bili tayo maleta. Bumili po kami maleta. Bagong maleta. Nung papunta na po ako ng airport, tinang, Father, ba't napaka-generous po ninyo? And I will never forget what he said. He said, Bob, if you have been blessed the way I have been blessed, you can't do anything but to bless others as well. That's the power of counting your blessings. Count your blessings so that you will be a blessing. And lastly, come to Him in daily focused prayer. Come to Him in daily focused prayer. My dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, naalala ko po one time, dumating po yung aking anak, yung anak ko na bunso ko, he is 9 years old. Ang dami po niyang dala-dala galing sa kotse. Hirap na hirap po siyang bumaba ng kotse. Nandun yung kanyang cellphone, charger, 2-piece chicken ng McDo, large fries, large Coke. Sabi niya, Papang, please help me. So lumapit po ako, kinuha ko sa kanya. You know what she said? He said, I'm glad you have bigger hands than me. Magandang analogy yun ah. You see, my dear brothers and sisters, with all the problems in the world, we cannot handle them all because our hands are too small for the big problems that we have in the world today. What do? We give it to Him who has bigger hands than us. That's prayer. Prayer is entrusting to the Lord all our concerns, all our worries, all our fears, everything that we are in our life. We entrust it to Him who has bigger hands than us. I took the bar in 2002. And I remember 6 months na review ng bar exam. Ang dasal ko po nun, Lord, sana lahat ng kailangan kong aralin, maaral ko. Pero ang dami po talaga, ang daming aaralin. Alam niyo po, 1 week before the bar exam, nagbago po yung dasal ko. Anong dasal ko? Lord, sana po yung lumabas lang sa exam yung naaral ko. Bakit? Imposible na po, hindi ko nakakayanin. That's the time when I entrusted everything to God. Lord, I did everything I can. I entrust everything to you in prayer. What's my suggestion? Do everything you can. Take care of the things that you can. But at the end of the day, you will realize your hands are always smaller than the problems. Therefore, through prayer, entrust everything to Him who has bigger hands than you. In conclusion, ano po yung ending verse ng Matthew 4? After Jesus survived 40 days in the desert, then the devil left him and angels came and attended him. The devil left him and angels came and attended him. What's the lesson that we can learn? When everything has been said and done, if we hold on to the Lord despite the wilderness that we are in, if we hold on to the Lord despite the challenges of the pandemic, if we hold on to the Lord despite the rising prices, despite the economic crisis, despite our health concerns, despite our relationship problems, if we hold on to the Lord will make sure your challenges will end. Matatapos din ito. And when it is over, expect the Lord's grace and comfort and love to overwhelm you. Asahan po ninyo na pag natapos ang inyong disyerto, ipaparamdam sa iyo ng Diyos ang kanyang dakilang pag-ibig at pagmamahal. Ganun kabuti ang Diyos natin. The moment He accomplishes His purpose for the desert, which is to bring out the best in you, God will come to you and comfort you. Bakit po kumbinsido ako dyan? Dahil nangyari po sa buhay ko yan noong 2008. Noong 2008, I was a young lawyer in the office of the Ombudsman, full of promise, full of dreams. I was an assistant special prosecutor in the office of the Ombudsman. But it was also in 2008 when I heard the Lord call me to leave my job and become a missionary, to serve Him, to become a preacher, a Catholic lay preacher, to serve my community, to serve different communities. It was also during that time when we started the Catch Fire rallies where BCBP, Familia, Couples for Christ, Ligay ng Panginoon gathered together in Araneta Coliseum. That was the time when we were starting all these things, and the Lord called me to leave my job and serve Him. Mahirap po because at that time I already had 2 children. Now I have 4. Sabi ko, Lord, saan ko kukunin ang igagastos ko sa pamilya? Now, if somebody tells you that if you follow the Lord, everything will turn out well, they're lying. That's not true. When you follow the Lord, it doesn't mean everything will be okay. In fact, sometimes the Lord will allow you to go through a desert first. And that's 2008 for me. That was a 1-year desert that I went through. Because in that year, naghirap po kami as a family, financially. I resigned from my job noong February to December, sunod-sunod po yung hospitalization ng aking pamilya, ng aking mga anak. And in fact, we spent the new year going to 2009 in the hospital because my wife went through a life-threatening operation. Nag-struggle po kami noon. But I will never forget one moment during that time. I went to the Blessed Sacrament. Nakaupo lang po ako sa Blessed Sacrament, sa tapat ng Blessed Sacrament ng panahon na yon, and I began to cry. Umiyak po ako hagulgol. Sabi ko, Panginoon, sinunod kita. I gave up so many things. Why am I going through this desert in my life? And you know, I only heard one thing from God. Ang sabi ng Panginoon sa akin, Bobby, you're my friend. You're my friend. Ano pong ibig sabihin nun? Ang kaibigan po, magkagulo na, Magkahirap-hirap na, hindi kanyang lulubayan. Di po ba? And I realized God was telling me, Bobby, I may not remove the desert now, but I will join you in the desert because I am your friend. At maniwala po kayo sa hindi, those few words comforted me. Those words carried me through my desert. And today it's 2008. It's almost 14 years later. And I look back and I said, God indeed carried me through. Today, I have a wonderful family. We are financially so much better today. I'm able to travel in different places in the world preaching the gospel of the Lord. I'm able to meet a lot of people, many from BCBP, by the way. Marami po akong kakilala sa BCBP. Na Kuya Serge, all these other Kuya Manny before. I've met so many people in my 14 years of ministry. And I have seen the hand of God in everything. God has ministered to me and my family. And if people ask me, if you do it again, will you do it all over again? Give up everything for the Lord. And my answer is a resounding yes. Why? Because yes, the desert was difficult. But after the desert, I saw how the Lord brought out the best in me. And today, I'm grateful. Because through that desert, I experienced the greatest love of all, the love of God for me and for the people I love. May you truly experience the joy of the Lord this Lenten season. And may you overcome all the challenges of the desert, of this wilderness that you're in. God bless you, brothers and sisters.